Mountain Man bought an Apache teen girl at auction and married her before the sunset. That's what the town witnessed on that blood-red October evening. But nobody knew the real reason why. When the gavel fell and gold changed hands, folks figured they'd seen another rough frontiersman claim his prize. What they didn't see was the Mountain Man's eyes, haunted by something darker than loneliness, driven by guilt that wouldn't let him sleep. Because some auctions aren't about buying, they're about saving, and some marriages aren't about love, they're about survival. But when federal marshals come calling with warrants and rope, even the highest mountain can't hide the truth forever. When justice rides up that narrow trail, who decides what freedom really costs? Your reactions remind me why these stories matter. If you still believe in the quiet power of love, justice, and truth, then you're part of the reason I keep sharing them. The crisp October wind whipped through the pines as Travis Whitmore guided his horse down the narrow mountain trail. His breath came out in white puffs, mixing with the morning mist that clung to the mountainside. The leather of his saddle creaked with each careful step his mount took on the frost-covered path. 3 months. That's how long he'd managed to stay away from Perdition Creek this time. But winter supplies couldn't wait, not with snow already dusting the higher peaks. The passes would close soon enough. His chest tightened as the town came into view through the trees. Too many memories lived down there. Memories of Sarah, of the life they'd planned together before the fever took her. 3 years had passed, but the weight of loss still pressed heavy on his shoulders. Something wasn't right in town today. Travis pulled his horse to a stop, studying the scene below. More horses than usual crowded the hitching posts. Rough-looking men gathered near the courthouse, their voices carrying up the hillside without forming clear words. His jaw clenched. Whatever was happening, he wanted no part of it. Get supplies and get out. That was the plan. The main street's packed dirt crunched under his horse's hooves as they made their way to Murphy's general store. Travis dismounted stiffly, his bones protesting the cold. He'd tied his reins to the post when shouts erupted from the town square. "Next lot! Prime stock here!" Travis's hand froze on the store's door handle. That voice, Judge Hartwell's unmistakable boom. But this wasn't any regular auction day. The hair on the back of his neck stood up as angry voices and crying filtered through the morning air. His feet carried him toward the square before his mind fully registered the decision. The crowd parted slightly as he approached, revealing a sight that stopped his heart cold. A wooden platform had been erected in front of the courthouse. Upon it stood Judge Cornelius Hartwell in his black coat, looking for all the world like he was conducting legitimate business. But what Travis saw below the platform turned his blood to ice. Apache people, men, women, children, bound and grouped in lots like cattle. Their faces showed varying degrees of fear and defiance as rough hands shoved them forward for display. "By the authority of territorial law," Hartwell's voice boomed, "these indentured servants are offered for fair sale to upstanding citizens." Travis's fists clenched at his sides. There was nothing fair or legal about this. His mind flashed back to his scout days with the cavalry, the raids on Apache camps, the screams of families being torn apart. He told himself then that he was just following orders, but the nightmares never stopped. A commotion near the platform drew his attention. 2 men were dragging forward a young Apache woman, perhaps 18 years old. Unlike the others, her hands weren't bound. She walked with her head high, dignity intact, despite the terror Travis could see in her eyes. "Now here's a special offering," Hartwell announced, his voice oily with false charm. "Young, strong, educated at the mission school, speaks English, starting bid at $50. Travis couldn't tear his gaze from the young woman's face. She reminded him so much of the faces that haunted his dreams, the women and children he'd failed to protect during those brutal raids, the ones who'd begged him for help in their own language, not knowing he understood every word. The bidding started. Travis's stomach churned as the price climbed. 30 years old, and he suddenly felt ancient with the weight of his past sins. He'd walked away from the army after that last raid, but walking away wasn't enough. Not anymore. The young woman, Tina, he heard someone call her, stood straight-backed on the platform. But Travis saw her hands trembling slightly at her sides. She was someone's daughter, someone's sister, maybe even someone's wife, just like the others he'd watched being torn from their families years ago. Memories crashed over him like ice water. Sarah's voice echoed in his mind. There's a difference between living with guilt and making things right, Travis. The bidding continued around him as Travis stood rooted to the spot, the past and present colliding in his mind. He'd failed those other families, failed to stand up, to do what was right. Sarah would have known what to do. Sarah always knew. The question was, what would he do now? The bidding started at $50. Travis watched as Jake Morrison, the saloon owner, raised his hand with a lazy smile that made Travis's skin crawl. 75, Morrison drawled, his eyes traveling over Tina in a way that made Travis's fingers curl into fists. 80, called another man, his voice slurred with morning whiskey. 100, Morrison countered, clearly enjoying himself. Travis couldn't tear his gaze from Tina's face. Though she stood straight and proud, her eyes betrayed a flash of terror at each bid. But there was something else there, too. A defiant light that refused to be extinguished. It reminded him of the spark he'd seen in Sarah's eyes whenever she'd faced down hardship. 125, someone shouted. Before Travis knew what he was doing, his own voice rang out across the square. $150. A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Travis felt their eyes turn to him, the mountain hermit they'd all learned to ignore. Morrison's head snapped around, his face darkening. 160, Morrison growled. Travis's hand moved to the heavy pouch at his belt. His entire winter savings lay within. $200 in gold coins. Money meant for supplies, for survival through the bitter months ahead. $180, Travis called, his voice stronger now. Morrison's face turned red. 190. Travis pulled the pouch free, feeling its weight. Sarah's voice whispered in his memory. Sometimes doing right costs everything. $200, Travis said quietly, but his voice carried across the suddenly silent square. Morrison's mouth opened, then closed. He shot Travis a poisonous look, but remained silent. No one else spoke up. Judge Hartwell's gavel cracked against the wooden podium. Sold to Mr. Whitmore for $200. The judge's eyes glittered with amusement as Travis approached the platform. A fine investment, sir. Though I must remind you that territorial law requires proper management of such property. We wouldn't want any incidents. Travis's stomach turned at the word property, but he kept his face neutral as he counted out the gold coins. His entire savings, gone in moments. What had he done? The mountain winters were brutal, without supplies. Tina was brought forward in iron shackles, her eyes downcast now. Travis felt the crowd watching, assuming he was just another lonely frontiersman buying himself a young bride. The thought made him sick. A guard roughly pushed Tina toward him. She stumbled slightly but caught herself, still maintaining that dignity that had first caught Travis's attention. Up close, he could see the fine trembling in her hands, the rapid pulse at her throat. Travis glanced around. Most of the crowd was dispersing, though Morrison and his friends lingered, watching with obvious disappointment. Judge Hartwell had already turned away, counting his ill-gotten gains. Taking a deep breath, Travis spoke softly in Apache, his words careful and clear. You are free. I bought your papers only to give you freedom. You have my word. Tina's head snapped up, her dark eyes wide with disbelief. She searched his face, looking for any sign of deception. Finding none, hope began to bloom in her expression, though tempered with understandable caution. You speak the language of my people, she whispered back in Apache, her voice rough from disuse. I learned during my time as a scout, Travis replied in the same tongue. But that was another life. Now Hey! Morrison's voice cut through their quiet exchange. What kind of gibberish you speaking with her, Whitmore? Travis turned slowly, positioning himself between Morrison and Tina. Not your concern, Jake. The saloon owner's eyes narrowed, but something in Travis's stance made him think better of pushing further. He spat in the dirt and walked away, his friends trailing behind him. Travis turned back to Tina, who was watching him with a complex mixture of hope and uncertainty. The shackles still bound her wrists, and the sight of them made his chest ache with familiar guilt. Let's get those off first, he said in Apache, keeping his voice gentle. Then we can talk about what you want to do next. Your choice, your freedom. The morning sun broke through the clouds then, casting long shadows across the town square. Travis felt the weight of what he'd just done settling onto his shoulders. No supplies for winter, no plan, and now a young woman's safety and freedom in his hands. But looking at Tina's face, seeing that spark of hope beginning to grow, he knew he'd had no choice. Some prices were worth paying, no matter how high. Behind Murphy's general store, the morning bustle of Perdition Creek felt distant. Travis led Tina into the shadowed space between stacked supply crates, away from prying eyes. The heavy iron shackles clinked as he worked the key into the lock. Hold still, he murmured in Apache, his weathered hands gentle as he removed the cruel restraints. They fell to the dirt with a dull thud. Tina rubbed her bruised wrists, her eyes welling with tears she refused to let fall. Thank you, she said softly in Apache. But she glanced toward the street, her expression troubled. You're free now, Travis assured her. You can go wherever you choose. Tina shook her head, her long black hair catching the filtered sunlight. Freedom alone cannot protect me. The territorial laws... She squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze directly. As an unmarried Apache woman, I have no rights here. They will recapture me within days, or worse. Travis felt the truth of her words settle heavily in his chest. He'd seen it before. Free natives rounded up on false charges, forced into corrupt work contracts. There is a solution, Tina continued, her voice steady despite the faint tremor in her hands. If I were married to a white man, I would have legal protection. The law would recognize me as a person. Travis took a step back, understanding dawning. You're asking me to marry me, Tina said simply. Not for love. We are strangers, but for protection, for survival. Travis's hand moved unconsciously to the ring he wore on a leather cord beneath his shirt, Sarah's matching band to his own. 3 years since fever had taken her, and still the thought of marriage to another felt like betrayal. But looking at Tina's face, the quiet dignity, the desperate intelligence in her eyes, he saw not a replacement for Sarah, but an innocent soul needing protection. Wasn't this what Sarah had always taught him? That love meant helping others, even at great personal cost? There's a church, he said finally, and an old preacher who might understand. Relief softened Tina's features, though wariness remained in her eyes. You will do this? Travis nodded slowly. I made a promise once to protect those who needed it. I mean to keep it. They walked side by side through the dusty streets, ignoring the curious stares of townspeople. The small white church sat on the outskirts of town, its weathered cross standing straight against the afternoon sky. Reverend Samuel Cross was tending his modest garden when they approached. He straightened slowly, leaning on his hoe, his kind eyes taking in the unlikely pair. Reverend, Travis said, removing his hat, we need your help. Inside the cool darkness of the church, Travis explained their situation in low tones, while Tina stood quietly by the first pew. The elderly preacher listened without interruption, his lined face thoughtful. "Marriage is sacred," Reverend Cross said finally, "not to be entered into lightly." "No, sir," Travis agreed. "But sometimes it's also protection for those who need it most." The Reverend's eyes moved to Tina, seeing perhaps what Travis had seen. The strength, the dignity, the desperate need for safety. "The Lord works in mysterious ways," he said softly. "Who are we to question his path?" He smiled gently at Tina. "My dear, do you enter this marriage of your own free will?" "I do," Tina replied, in careful English. The sun was setting as they stood before the altar, painting the small church in shades of orange and pink through the western window. Travis removed the leather cord from around his neck, sliding Sarah's simple gold ring free. "This belonged to my late wife," he told Tina quietly. "She would want it used to protect another." Tina accepted the ring solemnly, understanding the weight of the gesture. Reverend Cross spoke the familiar words as the last sunlight faded. Travis and Tina exchanged quiet vows, their voices steady in the growing darkness. When the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, the church was lit only by a single lantern's glow. "Mrs. Travis Whitmore," the Reverend said, signing the marriage certificate with a flourish. The name felt strange to Travis's ears, but he saw the slight straightening of Tina's shoulders at the legal protection it now provided. Outside, true night had fallen. Stars were beginning to appear above the church spire, bright and distant as promises. Dawn light filtered through thin muslin curtains at the Silver Spur boarding house. Travis sat rigid in a straight-backed chair, his eyes fixed on the worn floorboards while Tina slept peacefully in the narrow bed. He'd insisted on taking the floor with just his bedroll, maintaining a respectful distance throughout the night. The boarding house creaked with early morning sounds, footsteps on the stairs, the clatter of dishes from the kitchen below. Travis rose quietly, stretching his stiff muscles. His new bride stirred at the noise, dark eyes opening with momentary confusion before remembering where she was. "Good morning," he said softly in Apache. "Did you rest well?" Tina nodded, sitting up with the blanket drawn close. She'd slept fully clothed, her long black hair still neatly braided. "Yes, thank you for your consideration." They made their way downstairs to the boarding house dining room, finding seats at a corner table away from the few other early risers. Over plates of beans and biscuits, they spoke in low voices about their unusual situation. "I know this isn't a real marriage," Travis said carefully, watching her face. "But I want you to know I'll treat you with respect. You'll be safe with me up in the mountains until we can figure something better." "I understand," Tina replied, her English careful but clear. "You are an honorable man. I saw it in your eyes yesterday when you stopped the bidding." The sound of boots on the wooden porch outside interrupted their quiet conversation. Sheriff Tom Brady appeared in the doorway, his usually friendly face drawn with concern. His eyes found them immediately. "Travis," he said, approaching their table. "Ma'am, I need a word with you both. Private-like." They followed the sheriff to a quiet corner of the dining room. Brady removed his hat, running a hand through his graying hair. "I've got bad news. 2 pieces of it, actually." Travis felt his stomach tighten. Beside him, Tina went very still. "Judge Hartwell's declared your marriage invalid," Brady said, his voice heavy with regret. "Says since Tina was purchased property at the time, she couldn't legally consent to marriage. He's also issued a warrant for your arrest, Travis. Claims you stole territorial assets by trying to free her." Travis's hand clenched into a fist. "That's horse." He caught himself, glancing at Tina. "That's nonsense, and you know it, Tom." "Course it is," Brady agreed quietly. "But Hartwell's got the law twisted up to serve his purposes. There's more, and it ain't good." He turned to Tina, his expression softening. "Word came in from the cavalry posts. There were attacks on 3 Apache villages these past weeks. Heavy casualties. Tina's sharp intake of breath was the only sound she made. Her face remained composed, but Travis saw her hands trembling slightly. "My family?" she asked. "My mother?" Brady shook his head slowly. "No names yet, just numbers. I'm sorry." Travis watched Tina absorb this news, marveling at her strength. He'd seen hardened men break under less. "Now listen close," Brady continued, checking to ensure no one was within earshot. "I've got to enforce this warrant, it's my duty. But I reckon I might be occupied with some paperwork for the next hour or so. Wouldn't notice if anybody left town during that time." Travis met the sheriff's eyes, seeing the conflict there between duty and conscience. "Much obliged, Tom." "Don't thank me," Brady said gruffly. "Just get moving. There'll be bounty hunters on this soon as word spreads." He settled his hat back on his head, touching the brim in Tina's direction. "Ma'am, I truly am sorry about your people." They waited until the sheriff's footsteps faded before moving. Travis led the way upstairs, speaking quietly but urgently. "Pack whatever you can carry. We'll need to travel light and fast." In their room, Tina gathered her few possessions while Travis rolled up his bedding. They worked in efficient silence, both understanding the gravity of their situation. At the livery stable, Travis saddled his own horse, while the stable boy prepared a gentle mare for Tina. He paid extra for the borrowed horse, knowing they might not be able to return it. Loading their meager supplies, Travis helped Tina mount, noting her natural ease with horses despite her exhaustion. The events of the past day, the auction, their marriage, and now news of her village, would have broken most people. But there was steel in her spine as she gathered the reins. "We'll head north," Travis said softly in Apache, checking the cinch on his saddle one final time. "I know paths the bounty hunters won't." Tina nodded, her face composed but her eyes filled with a mixture of grief and determination. They were fugitives now, pursued by both the law and whatever shadows their pasts held. But as they urged their horses toward the northern trail, Travis felt an unfamiliar sensation beneath his worry, a sense of purpose he hadn't known since Sarah's death. Travis and Tina rode hard through the golden afternoon light, their horses' hooves kicking up pine needles along narrow deer trails. Travis led them away from the well-traveled paths, choosing instead the hidden routes he'd discovered during his years of solitude in these mountains. Every so often, he glanced back to check on Tina, who rode with natural grace despite her obvious exhaustion. The sun hung low in the western sky when Travis finally reined in beside a clear mountain stream, hidden from view by a thick stand of aspens. Their leaves shimmered gold in the fading light, providing welcome cover. "We'll rest the horses here," Travis said softly in Apache, dismounting with a quiet grunt. He helped Tina down, noting how she moved stiffly after hours in the saddle. While the horses drank deeply from the stream, Travis knelt and began drawing simple symbols in the dirt with a stick. "These are signs we use in the mountains," he explained. "This means water nearby, this shows a safe camp, and this," he drew a jagged line, "means danger." Tina studied the marks intently, her dark eyes focused. "Like our people's signs," she said, "we also mark the way for those who follow." "Your people taught me much about tracking," Travis admitted, then quickly changed the subject. "My cabin is here." He sketched a rough map. "We'll follow this ridge, then cross through a narrow pass. It's dangerous in the dark, but safer than the main trails." A moment of quiet settled between them as they shared dried beef and hard biscuits from Travis's saddlebags. In the gathering dusk, Tina's face seemed both young and ancient at once. "2 weeks ago, they came at dawn," she said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was gathering herbs with my mother, the medicine woman. The soldiers appeared like ghosts in the morning mist." She paused, gathering strength. "My uncle, Chief Earl Longfeather, he tried to negotiate, but they wouldn't listen. There was so much confusion, I became separated from the others." Travis felt the familiar weight of guilt press against his chest, remembering similar raids he'd witnessed. Instead of responding, he described his cabin, the sturdy log walls, the clear stream nearby, the garden patch he'd managed to cultivate in the short mountain summers. A distant sound stopped his words, horses' hooves on stone, men's voices carrying through the cooling air. Tina's head snapped up, her body tensing like a deer catching a predator's scent. "Bounty hunters," Travis muttered. "They're following our trail faster than I expected." He quickly scattered dirt over their tracks near the stream and helped Tina mount. "We'll have to take the high path now. Stay close and trust your horse." They rode into deepening darkness, climbing steadily higher on trails that grew increasingly treacherous. Travis led them through passages he'd discovered during his years as a scout, paths where the rock held no tracks, where horses could barely pass single file between towering cliff walls. The moon rose, casting sharp shadows that made the terrain even more challenging. Travis heard rocks clatter down the slope behind them, followed by cursing voices. The hunters were still following, though they'd lost ground on the difficult ascent. "Almost there," Travis encouraged, switching to Apache so their pursuers wouldn't understand if they overheard. "The horses know this trail." They climbed higher still, the air growing thin and cold. Tina remained silent, but Travis could hear her horses' labored breathing in the darkness. He'd learned these dangerous night routes during the war, though he pushed away memories of why he'd needed such skills then. Finally, near midnight, they crested a ridge, and Travis let out a quiet breath of relief. Below them, nestled in a protected hollow, sat his cabin. Moonlight gleamed off the clear stream that ran beside it, and tall pines stood guard, like silent sentinels. After the terror of their flight, the sight of his isolated home felt like a sanctuary. They led the exhausted horses down the final slope, moving carefully despite their own bone-deep weariness. The cabin was simple but solid. Travis had built it himself 3 years ago, after Sarah's death drove him to seek solitude in the mountains. A small garden plot lay dormant beside the stream, waiting for spring's return. Inside, Travis quickly lit a lamp, revealing the cabin's sparse but tidy interior. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, while simple furnishings, a table, chairs, and a narrow bed, filled the single room. It wasn't much, but it offered shelter and safety, at least for now. "We should be safe here tonight," Travis said, helping Tina settle into a chair. "The hunters won't try that pass in the dark. We'll need to be careful, but they don't know these mountains like I do." The morning sun filtered through the cabin's single window, casting long shadows across the rough-hewn floor. Travis had given Tina the small bedroom, hanging a worn blanket across the doorway for privacy, while he made do with his bedroll near the fireplace. The arrangement felt awkward, but necessary. Their marriage might be legal on paper, but both understood it was built on protection, not romance. As the days passed, they fell into an uneasy rhythm. Travis spent his mornings checking his trap lines and hunting, bringing home rabbits and the occasional deer. In the afternoons, he worked on reinforcing the cabin's walls and roof before winter set in. Tina watched everything with keen interest, asking thoughtful questions about frontier life in careful English. "You must know which plants grow here," she said one morning, standing at the cabin's door. "I see many that my mother used for medicine." Travis nodded, pausing from his work on a loose shutter. "The mountains provide everything needed, if you know where to look." Your people understood that better than most. Tina began exploring the area immediately around the cabin, always staying within sight. She gathered berries and edible plants, adding welcome variety to their simple meals. Travis noticed how she studied everything. The way he started fires, cleaned game, repaired tools. Her quick mind absorbed each lesson eagerly. A week into their shared exile, Travis returned from checking his snares, his left shoulder aching. He'd gotten careless 3 days earlier, surprising a black bear near its den. The scratch hadn't seemed serious, but now angry red lines spread from beneath his shirt collar. That evening, as he struggled to eat his stew, Tina noticed his flushed face and shaking hands. Without a word, she felt his forehead, her cool fingers confirming the fever she suspected. "Remove your shirt," she commanded, her usual quiet manner replaced by firm authority. When Travis hesitated, she switched to Apache. "I am a medicine woman's daughter. Show me the wound." The infected gash looked angry and swollen. Tina clicked her tongue disapprovingly, then gathered her shawl. "I will return soon. Rest." Through his growing fever, Travis watched her slip out into the gathering dusk. She returned carrying an armful of plants, some he recognized, others strange to him. Working quickly, she crushed leaves and roots together, adding a small amount of water to make a thick paste. "This will draw out the poison," she explained, applying the poultice to his shoulder. The mixture smelled sharp and clean, like mountain air after rain. She bound it in place with strips torn from a clean cloth, then brewed a bitter tea from different leaves. "Drink all of it." Travis complied, too sick to argue. Through the night, Tina tended him, changing the poultice and making him drink more tea. By morning, his fever had broken. 2 days later, the angry red lines had faded, and new pink skin began forming along the gash. "You have your mother's gift," Travis said as Tina checked the healing wound. "Thank you." After that, their relationship shifted subtly. Travis began teaching Tina to shoot, starting with his Colt revolver and moving on to the heavier Winchester rifle. She proved a natural marksman, her steady hands and keen eyes quickly mastering both weapons. "In these mountains, you need to protect yourself," Travis explained, as they practiced with targets set against a fallen log, from both four-legged and two-legged threats. Long evening conversations became their habit, sharing stories over coffee as the fire crackled. One night, Travis finally spoke of his military service, choosing his words carefully. "I was a scout for the cavalry," he admitted, staring into the flames. "I told myself I was just following orders, but I saw things I should have stopped." He fell silent, the weight of memory heavy in the firelit room. Tina watched him for a long moment before speaking. "My people say that guilt can poison a man's spirit worse than any wound, but sharing the burden helps it heal." She told him then about her family, her wise mother, her respected uncle Chief Longfeather, the children she had begun teaching in their village. "I believe education is the bridge between our peoples," she said, her eyes bright with passion. "If children learn together, perhaps they will grow up seeing each other as human beings, not enemies." Travis nodded, understanding her vision. Though their marriage remained one of convenience and protection, a deeper trust had begun growing between them, built on shared respect, common loss, and the quiet strength they recognized in each other. 3 weeks passed, like water flowing in the mountain stream. Travis and Tina settled into their daily routines, finding unexpected comfort in shared silence and simple tasks. One crisp morning, as Travis checked his trap lines near the eastern ridge, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Rising from a distant peak, thin columns of smoke danced against the pale sky. His heart quickened. During his scouting days, he had learned to read Apache smoke signals. These spoke of family searching for family, of peaceful intent. He watched the message repeat 3 times before the smoke dissipated into the autumn air. That evening, he told Tina about the signals. Her eyes brightened with hope, but neither of them spoke their deeper thoughts aloud. Sleep came slowly that night, with Travis keeping his rifle close at hand. Dawn broke clear and cold. Travis was already awake, tending the fire, when he heard horses approaching. He stepped onto the cabin's small porch, rifle ready but not raised. 3 mounted Apache warriors emerged from the tree line, moving with deliberate peace signs. Travis's breath caught in his throat. He recognized the lead rider immediately, Chief Earl Longfeather, a man he had met years ago during his more honorable days as a military scout, when peace treaties still seemed possible. The chief's face showed new lines of grief, but his bearing remained proud and dignified. Inside the cabin, Tina heard the horses. She appeared in the doorway, wrapped in the shawl Travis had given her. For a moment, she stood frozen. Then, with a cry that echoed off the mountainside, she ran toward the riders. "Uncle!" Chief Longfeather dismounted in one fluid motion, catching his niece in a fierce embrace. They spoke rapidly in Apache, their words tumbling over each other like the nearby stream. Travis watched, his rifle now propped safely against the cabin wall as tears flowed freely down Tina's face. The other two warriors remained mounted, alert but not hostile. Travis recognized their type, young men chosen for their tracking skills and loyalty to the chief. He kept his movements slow and obvious as he gestured toward the cabin. "Chief Longfeather," he said in Apache, "my home welcomes you. Please, share my fire and food." The chief held Tina at arm's length, studying her face before turning to Travis. His dark eyes held both wisdom and wariness. "I know your voice," he said in excellent English. "We have met before, but I cannot place when." Travis nodded. 7 years ago, peace talks at Fort Bradley. I was a scout then." Understanding flickered across Longfeather's weathered features, but he made no comment. Instead, he spoke quietly to his warriors, who dismounted and began tending to the horses. The chief's next words were for Tina, gentle but heavy with sorrow. "Your mother and father," he said softly in Apache. "They died bravely, protecting our people during the raid. Many others were lost that day." Tina's sob cut through the morning air like a knife. She buried her face in her uncle's chest, her shoulders shaking. Travis felt the familiar weight of guilt pressing down on him. How many other families had he helped destroy during his military service? But Chief Longfeather's next words carried a different tone. Speaking in English so Travis could understand, he explained, "I have been meeting with territorial officials who still believe in justice. There is a valley, 3 days' ride from here, where we might build something new, a settlement for our people, protected by law, where Apache and white families could live together in peace." He looked meaningfully at Travis and Tina. "A place where a marriage like yours would be respected, not hunted." Travis invited them inside, where Tina quickly prepared coffee and the last of their dried venison. As they sat around the cabin's small table, Chief Longfeather observed the domestic scene with careful eyes, the separate sleeping areas, the respect in Travis's manner toward Tina, the easy way they worked together. "You have kept her safe," the chief said finally, his voice carrying the weight of judgment. "And more than that, you have treated her with honor." Travis met the older man's gaze. "She saved my life," he said simply. "With her medicine and her strength. The honor has been mine." Tina, listening as she poured more coffee, touched her uncle's arm. "He speaks truth," she said in Apache. "This marriage began as protection, but Travis has become—" She paused, searching for the right word. "A true friend." Chief Longfeather nodded slowly, something like approval softening his stern features. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, promising another clear day in the mountains that had sheltered this unlikely family. The morning sun climbed higher as they shared stories around Travis's rough-hewn table. Chief Longfeather listened intently as Travis described his mountain life, but something tugged at the elder's memory. He studied the way Travis moved, careful, deliberate, like a shadow across stone, and how he spoke Apache with unusual fluency. Suddenly, Earl's eyes widened. He set down his tin cup with a sharp clank. "Now I remember where I know you from," he said, switching to Apache. "You are the one our people called Ghost Walker." Travis's shoulders tensed. He looked down at his hands, weathered and scarred from years in the wilderness. "5 summers ago, during the Red River campaigns," Earl continued, his voice gaining strength, A group of children from our village were trapped by rogue cavalry soldiers. A white scout appeared like a spirit in the night, moving without sound. He led them to safety through impossible terrain, then vanished before anyone could thank him. The cabin grew silent, except for the soft crackle of the fire. Tina looked between her uncle and husband, understanding dawning in her eyes. The children spoke of his eyes, Earl said softly. Kind eyes that carried great sadness. They said he moved like a ghost but had a warrior's heart. Travis cleared his throat. I didn't want anyone to know, he said roughly. What happened that night, it broke something in me. Those soldiers, they weren't following orders. They were going to... He stopped, unable to speak the horror of what he had prevented. Earl leaned forward. You disobeyed your commanders to save our children. Got myself discharged for it too, Travis admitted. Couldn't serve anymore after that. Couldn't face what that uniform had come to mean. The two Apache warriors by the door straightened, their expressions shifting from cautious respect to something deeper. One touched his chest in the traditional gesture of acknowledging a true warrior. Earl stood, his presence filling the small cabin. I have searched for Ghostwalker since that night, he said. Our people needed to thank the white warrior who proved not all hearts are clouded by hatred. He extended his hand, palm up, in the Apache gesture of brotherhood. Now I find him protecting my own bloodkin. Travis hesitated, then clasped the offered hand. Earl pulled him into a warrior's embrace, their foreheads touching briefly in the ancient gesture of kinship. The Great Spirit works in ways we cannot see, Earl said, switching back to English so all could understand. This is why I trust our dream of the settlement will succeed. When good hearts find each other across the divide of race, healing becomes possible. Tina wiped tears from her eyes, watching these two men, her uncle and her protector, bridge years of distrust in a single moment of recognition. The warriors by the door moved closer, offering Travis the respectful nods reserved for proven allies. But their moment of connection shattered as one warrior suddenly stiffened, looking towards the window. Smoke signals, he said sharply in Apache. From the southern ridge. They rushed outside. Rising above the distant tree line, thin columns of smoke carried an urgent warning, armed men approaching, danger close. Earl's warriors quickly mounted their horses, disappearing into the forest like shadows. Travis and Earl exchanged knowing looks. Both men recognized the gravity of the threat. Within 15 minutes, the scouts returned with grim news. Speaking in rapid Apache, they reported 6 armed men ascending the mountain trail, led by a professional tracker. The group matched the description of Judge Hartwell's infamous bounty hunters. 2 hours, Earl said, calculating the distance. Maybe less if their tracker is skilled. Travis nodded, already moving toward the cabin. They'll find the trail to the clearing soon enough. He began gathering essential supplies, his movements swift and practiced. Tina stood in the doorway, her face set with determination. We can't stay here, she said, but we're not running forever. Earl watched this exchange with approval, seeing how his niece had grown stronger during her time with Travis. The strange family bond before him, Apache and White, united by honor and shared purpose, reinforced his conviction about the settlement's importance. The bounty hunters are close, one warrior reported, returning from another quick scout. Their tracker has found signs of recent activity near the lower creek. Travis shouldered his rifle, checking that his revolver sat loose in its holster. The time for warm reunions had passed. Now they needed to act, and quickly, before Hartwell's men discovered their sanctuary. Travis and Earl moved swiftly through the trees, positioning the Apache warriors in a wide circle around the cabin clearing. The morning mist still clung to the ground, providing extra cover as they prepared their trap. We can't kill them, Travis whispered, crouching beside Earl behind a fallen pine. That would bring the whole territory down on us. Earl nodded, adjusting the leather strap of his knife sheath. Agreed. The path to peace cannot be carved with more bloodshed. They watched as Tina disappeared into a hidden cave behind a curtain of vines, a shelter Travis had prepared for emergencies. Her worried eyes met Travis's before she vanished into the darkness. Something in that glance made his heart skip a beat, but he pushed the feeling aside to focus on the task. The first sign of the bounty hunters came as subtle vibrations through the earth, 6 horses moving carefully up the trail. Travis recognized the lead rider immediately. Slade Morrison, Jake's older brother, and the territory's most feared tracker. Slade's weather-beaten face bore the same cruel lines as his saloon-keeper brother. "Split up," Slade commanded his men as they reached the clearing. "Check every inch. They're here somewhere." His cold eyes scanned the seemingly empty cabin. The hunters dismounted, spreading out exactly as Travis and Earl had predicted. 2 men approached the cabin's front door while others circled toward the back. Slade remained in the center, one hand resting on his holstered revolver. Earl gave a nearly imperceptible bird call, the signal to begin. The Apache warriors moved like shadows through the morning mist. The first bounty hunter went down silently, a strong arm around his throat until he lost consciousness. His weapons were quickly secured and hidden. Travis slipped through the underbrush, using skills learned from years of mountain living. A second hunter passed within arm's reach of his position. Travis waited until the man stepped past, then rose in one fluid motion. His arm locked around the hunter's neck while his other hand clamped over the man's mouth. Seconds later, another captive lay bound and gagged. One by one, the hunters disappeared. Slade's head snapped back and forth as his men vanished, but the morning mist and dense forest concealed their fate. "Report in!" he shouted, drawing his revolver. Only silence answered. The 5th man fell to Earl's expert takedown, leaving only Slade. The tracker backed toward his horse, weapon raised. His eyes darted between the trees, searching for movement. Travis stepped into the clearing, hands raised. "It's over, Slade. Put it down." Slade's revolver snapped toward Travis's chest. "Whitmore," he snarled. "Should have known you'd be fool enough to stay here." "No one needs to die today," Travis said calmly, taking a slow step forward. Slade's finger tightened on the trigger. "Judge Hartwell's paying good money to bring you in. Dead or alive?" Earl emerged silently behind Slade, but the tracker sensed the movement. He spun, squeezing the trigger as Earl's hand struck his wrist. The shot cracked harmlessly into the sky. In the next instant, Slade lay face down in the dirt, Earl's knee firmly planted in his back. Travis quickly secured Slade's hands while the Apache warriors emerged with the other captured men. Soon all 6 bounty hunters sat bound against the cabin wall, their weapons piled nearby. Tina appeared from her hiding place, relief evident on her face. She watched as Travis and Earl worked together to ensure the prisoners were secure, but unharmed. Her uncle and husband moved in natural harmony. 2 warriors from different worlds united by a common purpose. Travis found himself stealing glances at Tina as they worked. The morning sun caught her dark hair, and her quiet strength shone through as she helped tend to a minor cut one of the hunters had received during his capture. This was more than the frightened young woman he'd rescued from the auction block. She was becoming someone he couldn't imagine living without. Tina felt Travis's gaze and looked up, meeting his eyes. The tenderness she saw there made her breath catch. This was no longer just her protector, the man who'd married her for safety. In these dangerous hours, working alongside her uncle to find a peaceful solution, Travis had revealed his true heart. She saw now what kind of partner he could be, not just in survival, but in building a life together. Earl observed their exchanged glances with quiet satisfaction. The Great Spirit's ways were indeed mysterious, he thought, watching his niece and the man once known as Ghostwalker draw closer together in spirit, even as they faced an uncertain future. The captured bounty hunters sat sullenly as the morning wore on, their presence a reminder that difficult decisions lay ahead. But for now, Travis and Tina had found something neither expected in their marriage of convenience, the first stirrings of real love, born in the heart of danger. The mountain cabin glowed with warmth as the evening celebration began. Earl's warriors kept watch over the bound bounty hunters while inside. The unlikely family shared a feast prepared by Tina's skilled hands. The aroma of roasted venison mixed with traditional Apache herbs filled the small space. Earl sat cross-legged by the fire, his weathered face animated as he shared ancient tribal stories. "The coyote teaches us wisdom through his foolishness," he explained, gesturing with his hands in the traditional way. "Even his mistakes show us the path." Travis contributed tales from his years in the mountains, speaking of the land's hidden mysteries and the wisdom he'd learned from solitude. His voice grew soft as he described the secret valleys and hidden springs he'd discovered during his wanderings. Tina moved between them, serving portions of venison stew in wooden bowls. Her eyes often lingered on Travis, noting how naturally he sat with her people, how easily he spoke with her uncle. The firelight caught the silver in his beard and the gentle creases around his eyes when he smiled. "The valley near Crystal Creek," Travis said, accepting a bowl from Tina with a grateful nod. "That's where the settlement should be. Good water, plenty of game, and sheltered from the winter winds." Earl's eyes brightened. "I know this place. The old ones spoke of it as blessed ground." They discussed plans late into the evening, mapping out homes and gardens, discussing how Apache and white customs might blend in this new community. Earl's warriors would escort the bounty hunters far from the mountain tomorrow, releasing them with a clear message about peace and cooperation. As the fire burned low, Tina slipped outside for fresh water. Travis followed, drawn by an urge he couldn't resist. He found her by the stream, her figure silvered by starlight as she filled a wooden bucket. "Let me help," he offered, taking the heavy bucket from her hands. Their fingers brushed, and neither pulled away. Tina looked up at him, her dark eyes reflecting the stars above. "You've given me so much more than safety," she said softly in Apache. "You've shown me what a true partner can be." Travis set the bucket down carefully. "When I saw you on that auction platform," he replied in her language, "I thought I was saving you. But you've brought me back to life, shown me there's more than just surviving." "Is that all I've shown you?" Tina asked, taking a small step closer. Travis's hand trembled slightly as he touched her cheek. "You've shown me love again," he whispered, "when I thought that part of me was dead forever." Tina raised her face to his, and their lips met in a kiss that held all the tenderness of new love and all the strength of their shared struggles. The stream murmured beside them, and the stars wheeled overhead as their marriage of convenience transformed into something deep and true. The perfect moment shattered at dawn. Travis heard the horses first, too many for Earl's warriors returning. He stepped onto the cabin's porch just as Sheriff Brady led a large posse into the clearing. 2 men with federal marshal badges rode beside him, and 12 armed riders spread out behind them. Brady's face was drawn with discomfort as he dismounted. "Travis," he called out, "I've got federal orders to take you in." Earl emerged from the cabin, his bearing regal despite the early hour. "This man has done nothing wrong," he declared. "He protected my niece from illegal slavery and helped capture criminals who threatened peace." One of the federal marshals, a hard-faced man with cold eyes, unrolled an official document. "Judge Hartwell has evidence that Travis Whitmore is leading an Apache uprising. The captured bounty hunters prove he's organizing armed resistance against territorial authority." "That's a lie!" Tina rushed onto the porch, her voice fierce with protest. "Those men were hunting us. We only defended ourselves." "Ma'am, this man purchased you illegally and kidnapped you into the mountains," the marshal stated flatly. "Any statements you make are considered coerced." Brady stepped forward, shackles hanging heavy in his hands. "I'm sorry, Travis. My hands are tied. Federal orders." Travis looked at Tina, seeing the fear and love warring in her eyes. Then he turned to Earl, reading the helpless anger in his old ally's stance. With quiet dignity, he held out his wrists. "I'll go peacefully," he said. "No one else needs to be hurt." The shackles closed with a cold click. Tina pressed against Earl's restraining arm as the marshals led Travis to a waiting horse. Her voice broke as she called out, "I love you." Travis managed a small smile despite the chains. "I love you too," he answered, his voice carrying clearly across the clearing. "Both of you stay safe." Earl and Tina stood together on the porch, watching helplessly as the posse led Travis away. The morning sun cast long shadows through the trees, and all their dreams of peaceful coexistence seemed to fade like mist in its harsh light. Travis paced the narrow confines of his cell in the Perdition Creek jail, 5 steps one way, 5 steps back. The small window cast weak autumn light across the rough wooden floor, letting him glimpse townspeople going about their daily business. His thoughts kept returning to Tina, wondering if she was safe. The iron bars felt cold under his fingers as he paused to watch a wagon roll past. The charges against him seemed to multiply by the day, inciting rebellion, theft of territorial property, and now conspiracy to organize hostile Indian activities. Each one carried enough weight to send him to federal prison for years. Sheriff Brady had arranged for decent treatment at least. Clean blankets, regular meals, even a few books to pass the time. But Travis could barely focus on reading, his mind churning with worry about what Judge Hartwell might do next. Across town, Tina found sanctuary in an unexpected place. Maria Santos, the Mexican-American shopkeeper, had opened her home, despite the risk to her own business. The small room above her store became a haven, with Maria's quiet strength and understanding providing much-needed comfort. "Mi casa es tu casa," Maria had said simply when Tina arrived, leading her upstairs to a tidy bedroom that smelled of fresh lavender and clean linens. The peaceful afternoon shattered when Judge Hartwell's heavy boots echoed on the shop's wooden stairs. Tina stood her ground as he entered, his usual smooth manner barely concealing the steel beneath. "My dear," he said, removing his hat with exaggerated courtesy, "I've come to offer you a most generous solution to our unfortunate situation." Tina remained silent, her spine straight as an arrow shaft. The judge continued, setting his hat on Maria's small table. "The church mission in Denver has agreed to accept you into their program. Proper placement, you understand. Education, religious instruction, preparation for civilized life." His smile never reached his eyes. "In return, all charges against Mr. Whitmore will be dropped. You need only sign these papers annulling your arrangement with him." He pulled documents from his coat pocket, spreading them on the table. "You have until sunset tomorrow to decide. Choose wisely, my dear. Your supposed husband's future rests entirely in your hands." After Hartwell left, Tina pressed her forehead against the cool window glass, fighting back tears. The sound of horses outside drew her attention. Her heart lifted at the sight of 3 familiar figures setting up camp just beyond the town limits, her Uncle Earl and 2 trusted warriors. As dusk settled over Perdition Creek, Tina slipped out to meet them. Earl embraced her tightly, his presence giving her renewed strength. "Uncle," she said in Apache, settling beside their small fire, "Judge Hartwell wants me to abandon Travis. He offers to drop the charges if I agree to go to Denver." Earl's weathered face showed no surprise. "The snake offers poison, wrapped in sweet words," he replied. "But we have poison of our own. Truth." He reached into his saddlebag and withdrew a leather-bound journal. "I have kept records," he explained, opening it to reveal careful notations in both Apache and English. "Every illegal auction, every suspicious transfer of territorial funds, every broken treaty, names, dates, amounts, all recorded here." Tina's eyes widened as she scanned the pages. "This could destroy him." "See, it could," came Maria's voice from the darkness. She stepped into the firelight, a shawl wrapped tight against the evening chill. "And not just him. I have records too. Mexican families forced to sell their land for pennies, Apache children stolen and sold as servants. Even some white townspeople have begun to whisper about missing federal funds and suspicious court rulings." Earl nodded slowly. "The town is like dry tinder. It needs only a spark." Tina looked between them, her mind racing. The safe choice would be to accept Hartwell's offer, to secure Travis's freedom with her own captivity. But that would mean victory for corruption, more families destroyed, more lives ruined. She straightened her shoulders, feeling the strength of her ancestors flow through her. "We will not run," she declared. "We will not hide. We will fight him with truth." Maria squeezed her hand. "You are not alone, Querida. Many in town are tired of Hartwell's schemes. They only need courage to speak out." Earl added another log to the fire, sending sparks dancing toward the stars. "Tomorrow we begin gathering witnesses. Those who have suffered under Hartwell's corruption must stand together." Tina gazed toward the jail, where Travis waited. Her love for him had grown from gratitude to something deep and true. She would not abandon him to save herself. Instead, she would fight for justice. For him, for her people, for all those Hartwell had wronged. The fire crackled in the gathering darkness as they began to plan, their voices low but determined. The time for silence was over. Tomorrow would bring the start of their battle against corruption, fought not with weapons but with truth and courage. Morning sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of Perdition Creek's small church as an unlikely group gathered in Reverend Cross's study. Tina sat beside her Uncle Earl at the weathered oak desk, while Maria Santos arranged papers on a side table. The elderly Reverend pulled a leather-bound ledger from a hidden compartment behind his bookshelf. "I've been recording Judge Hartwell's suspicious activities for months," Reverend Cross said, his kind eyes hardening as he opened the ledger. "The Lord commands us to seek justice, and what I've witnessed here cries out to heaven." The Reverend's careful handwriting detailed forged territorial documents and misappropriated federal funds meant for Apache relocation. Dates, amounts, and official document numbers filled page after page. Earl spread his own records across the desk. "These match my observations," he said, pointing to dates of illegal auctions. "Here, 12 of our people sold in August alone. The money that should have gone to peaceful resettlement disappeared into Hartwell's accounts." Tina translated between Apache and English as survivors' testimonies were added to their growing collection of evidence. Each account strengthened their case, painting a clear picture of systematic corruption. A quiet knock at the church's side door announced Sheriff Brady's arrival. He entered carrying a leather satchel, his face grim but determined. "What I'm about to share could cost me my badge," he said, producing a stack of official territorial correspondence. "But I can't stand by anymore while Hartwell twists the law to hurt innocent people." The letters revealed a pattern of embezzlement, federal Indian funds diverted through a maze of false claims and phantom expenses. Maria's practiced eye for business accounts helped them trace the money's path. "Here," Maria said, highlighting figures in the margins. "He's stolen thousands of dollars meant for Apache families. The numbers don't lie." Maria then shared statements she'd gathered from Mexican-American families throughout the territory. Tales of lost land, stolen water rights, and forged deeds emerged, all manipulated through Hartwell's corrupt court. "The Ramirez family lost their entire ranch," Maria explained, her voice tight with anger. "Their deed disappeared from courthouse records the day after Hartwell's friend filed a competing claim." As morning turned to afternoon, they organized their evidence into clear categories: financial crimes, human trafficking, land theft, and abuse of judicial authority. Reverend Cross provided sworn statements from church members who had witnessed suspicious activities at the courthouse. "The territorial judge arrives from Denver tomorrow morning," Sheriff Brady reminded them, checking his pocket watch. Judge Franklin Pierce has a reputation for being traditional in his views about Apache rights. Earl's weathered face showed no discouragement. "Truth speaks in any language," he said firmly. "The evidence is strong." They worked through the afternoon, Tina's hands cramping as she helped translate documents into clear English. The case they built revealed dozens of Apache captives sold over the past year, with federal resettlement money flowing directly into Hartwell's private accounts. Maria organized testimony from merchants who had witnessed suspicious transactions, while Reverend Cross compiled character statements from respected townspeople who had observed Hartwell's changing behavior and growing wealth. As evening approached, they gathered their assembled evidence into organized folders. The case was strong. Financial records, witness statements, official documents, and multiple testimonies all pointed to Hartwell's corruption. But success would depend entirely on Judge Pierce's willingness to hear testimony that challenged territorial authority. "We have truth on our side," Tina said, looking at their collected evidence. Her voice carried the strength of her conviction. "Now we must pray he has the courage to see it." Earl placed a gentle hand on his niece's shoulder. "You have shown great courage, my daughter. Tomorrow we will stand together and speak for justice." Reverend Cross carefully locked their evidence in his church safe, where it would remain secure until morning. The trial would begin at 9 o'clock sharp, and Travis's fate, along with hope for real change in the territory, hung in the balance. Sheriff Brady left first, needing to maintain his official distance. Maria and Earl departed separately to avoid drawing attention. Tina remained briefly with Reverend Cross, drawing strength from a quiet moment of prayer in the empty church. Their case was built. Their evidence was clear. Now they could only wait for morning and trust that truth would prevail over prejudice and corruption. The Perdition Creek courthouse buzzed with tension on the crisp October morning. Every wooden bench groaned under the weight of spectators, townspeople in their Sunday best, territorial officials in pressed suits, and a dignified contingent of Apache representatives led by Earl Longfeather. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the packed room. Judge William Fairfax, newly arrived from Denver, adjusted his wire-rimmed spectacles and surveyed the crowd with keen eyes. His reputation for fairness had preceded him, evident in his careful attention as he reviewed the case documents. Judge Hartwell rose to present the prosecution, his usual smooth confidence somewhat strained. "Your Honor, Travis Whitmore stands accused of grave crimes against territorial stability. This renegade has not only stolen territorial assets, but consorts with hostile Indians, undermining the very fabric of our society." Travis sat straight-backed at the defense table, his mountain man's beard neatly trimmed, wearing clean but simple clothes. His eyes never left Tina, who sat with quiet dignity beside Maria Santos in the front row. Reverend Cross testified first, his aged voice carrying clearly through the hushed courtroom. "I performed their marriage ceremony in good faith, Your Honor. Mr. Whitmore has always shown himself to be a man of strong moral character." Maria Santos followed, her testimony precise and damaging. She detailed Hartwell's systematic abuse of Mexican-American families through manipulated land claims and forged documents. The judge leaned forward, taking careful notes. When Earl Longfeather took the stand, the room grew perfectly still. Speaking in clear English, he presented meticulously kept records of illegal auctions and misappropriated federal funds. His revelation of Travis's past identity as Ghost Walker, the White Scout who had saved Apache children from rogue cavalry soldiers, sent whispers rippling through the courthouse. The climax came when Tina approached the witness stand. Her dark eyes met Judge Fairfax's directly as she took the oath. Speaking in educated, articulate English, she recounted her capture, the horror of the illegal auction, and Travis's intervention. "Travis Whitmore purchased my freedom not to own me, but to restore my dignity," she testified. "He offered protection through marriage, treating me with complete respect. What began as an arrangement of safety has grown into genuine love and partnership." Her systematic dismantling of Hartwell's legal arguments displayed both intelligence and deep understanding of territorial law. Even those who had come expecting to see a savage shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their prejudices challenged by her poise and eloquence. As Tina described their life together and their hopes for building bridges between cultures, hardened faces in the crowd softened. Her testimony painted a vision of possibility, a future where different peoples could live together with mutual respect and understanding. Judge William Fairfax returned to the packed courtroom after just 30 minutes of deliberation. The scratching of his chair against wooden floors echoed through the tense silence. He adjusted his spectacles, surveying the anxious faces before him. Having reviewed all evidence presented, this court finds Travis Whitmore innocent of all charges, he declared, his voice firm and clear. Furthermore, the marriage between Travis Whitmore and Tina Whitmore is deemed completely legitimate under territorial law. A collective gasp rippled through the courthouse. Tina's hand found Travis's, squeezing tight. More gravely, Judge Fairfax continued, this court finds overwhelming evidence of corruption against Judge Cornelius Hartwell. Sheriff Brady, you will take him into custody immediately on charges of embezzlement of federal funds and multiple violations of territorial law. Sheriff Brady stepped forward, a slight smile playing at his lips as he withdrew his handcuffs. Much obliged, Your Honor. He approached Judge Hartwell, who had gone pale with shock. But Judge Fairfax wasn't finished. Additionally, I hereby validate Chief Earl Longfeather's petition for the Apache settlement in Whitmore Valley. Let this become a model for peaceful coexistence between all peoples in our territory. The courtroom erupted in celebration. Travis pulled Tina into his arms as tears of joy streamed down her face. Earl Longfeather embraced them both, his dignified features alight with triumph. 6 months later, the settlement flourished beyond anyone's expectations. The schoolhouse Travis built beside their expanded cabin rang with children's laughter, Apache and white students learning side by side under Tina's patient guidance. Her natural gift for teaching bridged cultural gaps daily, as young minds opened to new understanding. Travis found his redemption through building this community, his past guilt replaced by purpose. He and Tina's marriage deepened into profound partnership, their love growing stronger with each passing day. Earl Longfeather became a frequent visitor, his wisdom helping guide the settlement's growth. Sheriff Brady often rode up from town, staying for dinner and Tina's legendary fry bread, their former adversary now a trusted friend. At the Autumn Harvest Festival, the entire community gathered to celebrate their first successful growing season. Lanterns twinkled as dusk painted the mountain sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Apache drums blended with fiddle music, creating a new harmony all its own. Travis and Tina stood on their favorite ridge overlooking the settlement. Smoke rose from cabin chimneys, while children played in the gathering darkness, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Tina took Travis's weathered hand and gently placed it on her growing belly. His eyes widened with wonder as he felt their child move beneath his palm. A new life that would know only peace between peoples, a symbol of hope for generations to come. Thanks for watching. Stories like this shape us in ways we don't always expect. If something resonated, subscribe. I'm back tomorrow with another one worth hearing.